p.m. East Lansing. You are listening to Impact Izzone, the student voice of Michigan State University basketball. Bringing you news, updates, and more.
I'm proud of myself for being irrelevant.
Yeah, it's snowing outside.
Huge game for both teams, but especially Michigan State.
What is up, members of the Izzone, and welcome back to Impact Izzone, your one and only source for Michigan State men's basketball coverage. As usual, I'm your man, Julian Mitchell, in the host seat once again. Back in Studio H, actually, here in East Lansing and Impact Studios to record this episode 21, Season 6 of the podcast. Back in East Lansing with the crew, Kyle Turk, Joey Ellis, Amanda Poole, and Joe Dandrin, all in studio with me. Guys, it's good to be back. Felt like we haven't been in this studio in a while to record.
You've been on quite the sabbatical, haven't you?
I really have.
It's been a while.
Well, from this studio.
Right.
We've been on the road.
We've hit the road.
We have been on the road.
We really have. We've been everywhere. Came back from spring break, straight to Chicago. Right from Chicago, straight to Des Moines. It's been some trips. Amanda, you got to join in on the Chicago trip?
Yeah, it's been an incredible experience, I do have to say. I definitely think that I'm not sick of it yet. That's good.
Here we go. It's been fun. And Joe, you didn't get to go on the last two trips, but you're going to D.C., baby.
I know. I mean, I never been on a plane, so it's going to be kind of a new experience.
It's a big day.
Wait,
but
really?
That's huge.
Yeah, I've
That's
never
huge.
flown.
Oh, that's right. She doesn't know about this yet. This is great.
Are you scared? I'd be scared if I were you.
I mean,
Stop.
I mean,
I'm
don't
not.
be scared.
It's not
like
that
I
long
would
of a
be.
flight. It's like, what, an
Stop.
hour and a half?
Well, you know the
It's-
success rate on flights, right?
Stop.
Yes, it's
Okay,
very
no,
high.
I didn't
Yo,
mean it like that. I
chill.
didn't mean it like that. You'll be fine.
Stop.
You'll be
It's
just
literally
fine.
nothing.
I know. I never said I.
Just make sure you pay attention to when the flight attendants give their spiel. Just make
No,
sure you pay.
don't. Here, pro tips.
I know. It'll
Joe-
be okay.
Joe, pro
It'll be
tips.
okay.
1, don't turn your phone on airplane mode. That's a
Yes.
myth.
Yes,
What?
it is.
2,
No, it's not.
I never
buy a
turn
pack
it
of
on.
gum
I always do that.
and
I
chew the
never.
gum while
Crash
you're
a
up so your
plane.
ears
No,
don't
we're
pop.
not.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
That's a good one.
Buy a pack of gum, Sudafed, whatever.
What's
so
the
your ears
third?
don't
What's the
pop.
third
Exactly.
tip? Julian, what's the
Sudafed?
third tip?
It's a
Big
medicine.
third tip for me, window or aisle seat. I prefer window because I like to lean my head on the side because if I don't, I'm 100% on somebody else's shoulder.
Aisle.
And aisle, you don't want middle.
No.
That's the
Well,
thing.
yeah, of course not.
I
Aisle.
like middle. You get cozy.
Great leg room on the aisle.
And I don't mean this in any certain way, but you're not putting your head on my shoulder.
Aw.
Oh, that would have been sweet.
It'll be fine. It'll be a good experience.
It'll be fantastic.
Well, I think it. Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I mean, obviously, I'm excited to go to DC,
It's going to be a fun time.
but it's
Have you ever been
the
to
whole
DC?
flight thing. Yeah, I've been to DC twice actually.
Oh, well.
DC, great place. If you guys
Yes, I
stop
love DC.
anywhere,
It's
I
awesome.
don't
You want a Ben's
remember
chili?
what
Ben's-
place it's at.
Ben's chili?
Get some fried Oreos.
wow.
We got to go
Sounds like a
see the
heart
Lincoln
attack.
Memorial.
Oh, we
It's
will.
so good.
Well, I
Lincoln
think
Memorial,
the hotel's
overrated.
within like
Or
vision.
not Lincoln
Like we can
Memorial, but-
see the White House, you know. Like
Well, we got to go
those
see
types
the
of
White
things.
House too. Then
We'll
of
get a
course.
tour.
We
See what
will.
we can do.
We'll see
Yeah,
where
I'll
we'll-
call DJT myself.
Call
wow.
Donnie.
You'll call DJT.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
me, Kanye, plugs.
Wow.
Oh man.
But it'll be a great time. But before going out to DC, we have to recap what happened in Des Moines and then take a look at what's going to happen later on. So starting off, Michigan State finally out of the first weekend for the first time in the past 3 seasons. The Spartans will advance out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, defeating Minnesota in the second round pretty handily. Final score 70-50 in that game. It was a Michigan State lead. I believe wire to wire was the win for Michigan State. Double-digit lead for most of the game. Only time it really got into question was Minnesota cut it to 10, but Cassius Winston puts it away with a couple of heroic shots from him. And to me, it was an easy win for Michigan State. And just for you guys, I want to get your thoughts, takeaways, and especially on the fact that this is Michigan State's first time in a Sweet 16, what feels like forever, although it's the 14th in 22 years for Tom Izzo.
Joey and I have never seen a Michigan State team get this far in the NCAA tournament. Which, I mean,
Wild.
you talk before each of those seasons, and you're like, oh, man, yeah, they'll be fine. They'll make it to, insert level here. They finally made it. I'm only glad that they have decided to grace us with a trip to the Sweet 16.
But you also got the sense that, I mean, Minnesota, like you said, it was a wire-to-wire win, and they didn't really offer a whole lot of resistance. But you kind of got that sense once those zeros hit the clock that they finally got over that hurdle of the first weekend and finally have a chance to play with one of the last 16 teams. And now, of course, the matchup looming maybe down the road with Duke. It's tough to overlook that, but now, at least they have a chance to put themselves in a position to play for an Elite Eight.
Yeah, I definitely think, just talking about the Minnesota game, I didn't see much that made me confident that they were going to go further facing this LSU team. So I think that it's a good win and it put them further in the tournament. But based on turnovers and just how bad Minnesota played in certain parts, it didn't really prove a lot to me.
Well, yeah, I think that game was it's a good thing to have before you face LSU, especially after kind of how that Bradley game went. You really didn't want to go into facing LSU after the way that all kind of went against Bradley, kind of struggling there. And having a good game, obviously Minnesota didn't play well, but I think just having a big game and then is going to give them the confidence they need. And then, of course, just kind of getting over that hump, kind of the bad taste in your mouth after losing to Syracuse and then Middle Tennessee State, too.
Yeah, and for me, looking at this game, the takeaway is I don't think Minnesota played their best basketball, and a big part of that is the fact that Jordan Murphy only played 4 minutes in the game, sat with a back injury that hampered him for the rest of the game, didn't come back in, and it was just Minnesota didn't play well. Michigan State didn't play their best basketball, turned the ball over 22 times. If Minnesota shoots better from the field, they shot 30% as a team, you could argue it's a closer game, if not a Minnesota win. And looking at these first 2 wins for Michigan State to get out of the first weekend, not necessarily a huge struggle against Bradley, but definitely a fight. Some battles from the Braves in that game. And then Minnesota, 22 turnovers, still not a great effort. Are you worried at all that these Spartans are just going to hit a wall playing an LSU team that isn't? They're a much more talented team.
Well, they got maybe 3 pros right now on that team in Waters, Reed, and one other guy whose name is forsaking me at the moment.
Big B. Williams?
No.
Mays?
Naz Reid?
Nope. It's one of the guards.
Jones.
No,
Nope.
Skylar.
It's either
Skylar Mays?
Yeah, I said
yes,
Mays.
either Mays or Smart too, I think could be. But that's not important.
It's neither here nor there.
Neither
Yeah,
here nor
exactly. But I think there is concern. If you're going to turn the ball over the way Michigan State did 22 times, and you still beat Minnesota by 20, considering they didn't really have a whole lot of offensive production outside of Amir Coffey, I think you have reasons to be worried, especially for an LSU team who top 10 in the country in steals a game, and in Michigan State, as we know it, 12, 13 turnovers per game. But like I said, if you're turning it over like that, you should really be worried because this is an LSU team. Talent alone is a Final Four caliber team. But if you keep those turnovers and keep LSU out of transition and running like they really like to do, I think Michigan State, still top to bottom, is probably a better team, better coach, although they're playing pretty darn well under Tony Benford, who's been filling in there for Will Wade. So it's going to be a tough game. All these games when the Sweet 16, Elite 8 come around, you really have to earn it for all 40 minutes.
And my thing with the Minnesota game is a large part of it is Jordan Murphy's not there, or he's not 100%, whatever. MSU still held him to 30% from the field. It's not as if, Minnesota was somewhat streaky all year in the Big Ten. Doesn't mean that they couldn't have gone out and shot, made about 10 threes and maybe given MSU a real fight. MSU's defense is still in that same kind of mode for me of, if they're on their game, they can shut down LSU. They can maybe shut down Duke in the Elite Eight. They're such an elite team, especially, on the 2-point defense side, to where, the ceiling is still pretty high. It's going to take a pretty special game from an opponent to beat MSU still at this point in the year, just because of that defense alone.
It's going to be a very interesting matchup with LSU. Another thing that popped out against Minnesota, and one thing that Izzo was very happy with, and that they got the draw of Minnesota in that second round, is the fact that they're a more conventional team, playing 2 bigs, a couple of guards from the outside, which would allow for Nick Ward to get more time and play a better of a game. And although his stats aren't flashy, 20 minutes, 9 points, 7 rebounds, 4 of 8 from the field for Nick Ward, I think this was a game that really should help him round back into form. And I think it's going to be big come LSU with Naz Reid and Big B. Williams down low. And I'm wondering, seeing this game from Nick Ward, how big is that for Michigan State down the line? Especially, they're going to start Xavier Tillman, but having that secondary scoring out of Nick Ward. And what did you guys see from him in this first weekend?
Well, Nick Ward, that's what you like to have coming off your bench. You like to have, people who can put the ball in the basket. So having Ward off there, I think, gives this offense a different look when maybe you're resting Cassius Winston and you kind of take Tillman out. Maybe you're not running as much ball screen things like they have been doing with Tillman. and they're kind of just giving it to Ward with that second unit. That might be kind of good for this team, I think. But at the same time, it's, you also don't want to get away from what's been really successful for you. So, also, of course, Tillman playing defense. That's going to be big for them. Him starting now, I think, is a much better option instead of Ward. So, it's going to be interesting against, especially, like you said, a traditional LSU team with the two bigs. I'm going to see, what happens. Maybe Tillman gets in foul trouble with Reed. There's a lot of different scenarios we could look at.
Yeah, and I definitely think that when, Ward came out first, I personally was so not confident in him, and I don't think he was confident in himself either after that injury. But I think games like this, like the Minnesota game, really instills confidence in him, and I think Izzo can see kind of where he's at with how back in shape he is. So I think hopefully that these games have given him enough confidence to go forward and, step it up a notch too when the LSU game comes around.
And if anything, his minutes from that Bradley game to Minnesota doubled. 10 in the first round, 20 there, and like you said, Julian, being more productive as the games go on. But they're going to need it because, as Joe was saying, two pretty darn big men that LSU has. You're going to need what Nick Ward brings you, and that's 13 points a game at the end of the day. And I think he still could be maybe a mini X factor down the stretch here because they need somebody to turn to when it's not Cassius Winston doing what he does. And it's been Xavier Tillman who's been stepping up and scoring, and even Kenny Goins when he's been hitting his shots. But I still think Nick Ward, when he gets it going, he's still a very tough offensive match that really helps Michigan State's offense flow. Maybe not to the point we've seen it with him off the floor, but I think it definitely helps having him back in the lineup.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me, and it happened in Minnesota, is when the going got rough, it was when Winston was off the floor. It takes his heroics to kind of push away a Minnesota comeback, and this is bridging into an LSU preview. But I want to ask you all, how long do you think Winston can keep this up? Is it possible for him to take this team all the way now that the competition is getting steeper? Xavier Simpson, yes, is a very competitive guard, but now we're getting into guys that Winston hasn't seen before. Tremont Waters is a force all his own. He's a guy who averages about 2 steals a game on the defensive end. He gets in people's pockets. He's longer, athletic. He can get to the rim with anybody. Can Winston keep this going? Is he enough for this team to get out, not just of a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8, but make it back for a second trip, or it's not a second trip, but another trip to the Final Four? Or is it a little bit too early for Michigan State and next year is the year?
Are you asking more about his health?
His health, performance level. Is there any other guys you look at that need to be more consistent? I think Kenny Owens is a guy we talked about, but I think there are other guys now that I'm looking at. I'm looking at Matt McQuaid. I'm looking at Aaron Henry. They got to find a way to put in some buckets.
With the Winston thing, I think, it's 2 games in a weekend. It's not as if he's playing a game on Sunday, a game on Tuesday, and another game on Saturday anymore. You get to this stretch and you're rested up, and I'm sure the coaching staff and the training staff know what his ability level is. And down the stretch, he's been playing as well as anyone else in the nation in terms of that 7-0 stretch during that Minnesota game. I don't know how many other players in college basketball right now could pull that off because it was just knowing the moment, knowing the place so well, and just silence that entire crowd just like that. For me, it's been more Aaron Henry is the X factor. He's been very much improved. That second game against Minnesota, I think 9-9 from him, put forth some really strong efforts, and he's the kind of guy, he's athletic, and that he can stick with the guys like from a team like LSU on the perimeter and play solid defense. You get the right, you don't even need him to go and score 10, 12 points. You just need him to play solid defense and maybe just fill in transition, and you're good to go from there.
And looking at LSU in the lineup they bring in, and speaking of Henry, looking at some of the matchups, defensively, who would you put on Tremont Waters, Henry or McQuaid? I think I might go with Henry on Waters at least to start, sort of like they did against Minnesota, putting Henry on Coffey. And McQuaid was on Kauscher.
McQuaid's 6'4", right?
McQuaid on Grays.
Or Mays. Yeah, McQuaid on Mays.
McQuaid's like 6'4", right?
Right around there.
Right around 6'4".
I think he matched up a little bit better with Waters, just from the height thing. Mm-hmm. I think Waters is, 6'2"?
Yeah.
And then
5'11", they have him listed.
Who? Okay,
Waters.
yeah, 6 foot then. 6 foot, 6'1".
Well, they also have Foster Lawyer listed.
Foster Lawyer is 6 feet.
Yeah, and stretch.
He and I in shoes. Let's see. No, you could do what you want. MSU played the matchups pretty well against Minnesota. Coffey went off for 25, but no one else was in double figures. It is what it is. He's 5'11". Wow. You just had to get
Told you.
had to get the evidence out.
There you go.
That
Fact
doesn't
check.
seem right. Yeah, I guess he's not that big.
No, but
I feel like his arms are long.
it'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
might be.
I wonder because the thing is, Cassius isn't all that bad defensively. I think that's like the one thing that people don't talk about his growth, where he's gotten a lot better at that. Simpson can get to the basket, and he's been pretty bad statistically against Winston this year.
I think when he turns the energy level on, and I think you saw that over that 7-0 stretch that he put in. I mean, one of those
Steal
points
and
comes
deflection.
off a steal in the passing lanes, and that's more effort on that end from him. So I think he can do it. I think it'll be a very interesting matchup between him and Tremont Waters, both guys who a little bit more passing guys, like to get others involved. Waters can take it to the rack with the best of them, as Joey and I saw to win the game over Maryland, right to the rack. Could have been a travel.
Travel. It was.
You say travel?
It's travel.
I don't know. It looked like a gather 1-2 to me.
Can't stand that. It's travel. But hey, they didn't call it
Okay, but you also defend Harden's travel.
because he doesn't travel.
What's
Because
the
he likes
difference
Harden.
here?
He likes
What's
Harden.
the difference?
Doesn't travel.
He thinks Harden's a good player. That's what it is.
Joey. I don't know how you defend. I don't know how you
Wait,
can
Well,
make
hey,
a case for
I don't know.
Harden.
I don't know how NBA defenders
Wait.
defend James Harden because he pops off.
Well, no, that's you're
Wait.
right. You're right.
never mind. I don't even want to get into this.
We're on a strict time schedule for today. We can't get into such matters.
Okay.
So, still looking at LSU, Naz Reid, Big B Williams, looking at that front court matchup. Who do you give the edge to there? Because I think Naz Reid, Big B Williams, those are two very athletic guys. They're very, to me at least, a lot different than some of the Big Ten front court mates you'd see Tillman and Goins get paired against. I think that's a very interesting, different matchup. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on those two, and how would you, if your time is, go about limiting those two?
Well, it's about X on defense, isn't it? I mean, with Tillman, he's been able to keep a lot of these big front court guys in check recently. Teskey, I know he's not a post guy, but has not performed well against MSU. I'm trying to think. Lesson didn't go crazy when they played OSU in that quarterfinal game. I think it's wait and see. I mean, Tillman's he's been so much better defensively over the last month and a half that I can't really say one way or other someone's going to win. It's going to come down to, can Goins hit his shots from the outside, and can Tillman give you that length defensively?
Then you have to wonder defensively, can they keep these guys out of the paint? I mean, Big B Williams is an inexperienced guy more than anything, having transferred out from Oregon, but he's a streaky shooter offensively. I think Reed's more of the guy you definitely have to worry about. 14-7 for him, and like Julian said, 7 feet, 250 pounds. He's an absolute load for a freshman.
He can stretch it too. He's attempted 79 threes on the season.
He can
made
shoot
28 of them for 35%.
All freshman team in the SEC. So this guy is no slouch. He's as good as you'll find in that conference. So it'll be interesting. Michigan State, like Kyle was saying, will have their hands full, and it'll be a test for Xavier Tillman and those MSU bigs.
I think both ways it's a test.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, watching the Maryland LSU game, you definitely saw LSU get after it a lot more, and they're a lot more energetic on the court. And I hope that this Michigan State team, doesn't get too tired and kind of rotates their bench players. And as they've been doing, and they've been doing well. But if Ward and Kenny Goins and those players that we expect a lot out of now, if they fail to do that, and then if they keep up their turnover amounts, it's just not going to go well for them, because LSU is going to get after it.
I mean, yeah, and I think you got to see, because Cassius Winston looks, the whole year he's really looked tired, and you just got to see, pick and choose your spots for your Tom Izzo. Where can you give him rest? Because once it gets down to this point, it's like you're going to have to play him 30 minutes. You're going to have to play him 35, 36 minutes. And you've got to kind of really figure out where can you give him that time to go sit on the bench and just relax, because because it's going to be, if your goal is making it to the national championship, you've got to find those spots. And then just seeing how Tillman, Joey, kind of what you're talking about with Naz Reid, it's seeing how Tillman and Ward handle him inside is going to be interesting, because, like you said, averages 14-7, could easily go for a double-double at 7 foot. And, that's going to be a really interesting matchup, and I think that's one to watch. And this LSU team obviously came down to the last shot with Maryland, so Michigan State, they can have a hot shooting night and win by 10, but LSU's going to give them problems, I think.
And that brings us to our prediction section. Michigan State, LSU, the matchup in D.C. I got to get everybody's predictions. I'll start us off first. I'm going to go with Michigan State. I think they get a win, advance to the Elite Eight, and I think the defense is the biggest reason. I think offense hangs around. They don't do enough to get the edge, but the defense is where it's going to dominate. I don't think LSU is that great of a 3-point shooting team. They pack the paint. Nas Reed, Bigby Williams don't have great nights, and Winston wins the matchup with Tremont Waters, leading Michigan State to an Elite 8 berth.
Are we doing scores on this or what?
You can give a little by
scores,
4 by 5.
By 4 by 5. I'm gonna go with the 6.
All right,
by 6.
Dirk?
Okay. MSU is favored by 6 right now. I'd say MSU by about 5 or 6, just because LSU cannot shoot them out of the building. Waters will score, as usual, 20, 22 points, and Reed will pop in a good amount there. But I trust MSU's bench a little bit more than LSU's. I don't think we haven't talked much about MSU's bench today, but you like what Ward does off the bench. You like what someone like, even like a Gabe Brown could go off for a couple of threes. Never know. I just trust MSU with Izzo more than I trust LSU without Wade as their coach.
Make it a little closer. I'll go MSU by 2. Late bucket. I'll tell you, the way LSU wins this game is if MSU's over 15 turnovers. I think that'll be the magic number.
And they don't hit threes.
And they don't hit shots, right? Which is kind of the name of the game. But if LSU's disruptive with the ball and Michigan State turning it over like they will or have been, I think it could be problematic.
Yeah, even if Michigan State's defense is incredible, if they're not making it up on offense and using those defensive stops to, get up more, I think it could be, an MSU loss. But my prediction is LSU losing. I would probably say like 5 or 6 points too. That can be.
I'm gonna be a little more
bold,
a little more generous on this side. I'm gonna go Michigan State by 10.
Wow.
Okay.
Gonna get double digits. I think Michigan State, you can get going behind the 3-point line. Goins hits a couple. McQuaid, he's been a little quiet in the last couple games. Maybe have something like he did in that Big Ten title game. So I think you could see
pop off a cool 27.
Yeah, I mean,
what was it? 7 triples in that game?
And it's and that was a very inspired performance, obviously, with what happened. But
experience too, I think, wins out for MSU because they're a lot older.
Yes, they're experienced and they're deeper. I mean, if you can get good minutes out of Kithier and Lawyer, I don't know why I couldn't remember his name, 5'10" Lawyer. I think that
it's not his first name, by the way.
I know.
It's Foster.
He has a name.
Okay, but if you can get good minutes out of your bench, if you're MSU, obviously you got the experience in your starting lineup. You've got to give it to them, and I think that'll give them the double-digit win.
There we go. And Turk, you said it, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it. But one thing that I find very interesting, this team is very experienced, obviously, with a lot of guys with some years, some mileage on them. But this is the first Sweet 16 for anyone in that locker room.
The weight is off their shoulders now.
Do you
believe, Julie?
I mean, I wrote about it. I believe, but
do you believe?
It is a new thing. They have never been under the lights this bright now. Down to 16 left.
You think that's good, though? I mean, because that first game, they looked tight.
It's for and against you.
First game, they looked tight as could be for like 35 of the 40 minutes. But I thought Minnesota, they loosened up big time.
They looked like regular season MSU.
Right. So once you get past that first hurdle and you're just playing, like Joe was saying, LSU not all too experienced. Michigan State not to this, scene of a Sweet 16, but in terms of, guys being there before and I guess really just Goins. He's been the only one. But
when's the last time LSU's been in that stage as well?
They haven't as well.
Most of those guys are young.
This is their first in 13 years, I believe.
And not without their head coach either.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a fascinating matchup. It really is.
It is. These two teams going head-to-head. And last little question before we get out of here. Michigan State, out of the first weekend, if they lose here in the Sweet 16, do you consider it a disappointment? Or was this worth it just to get over the hurdle and know that next year a lot of this team is coming back? Or do you still need more?
There's a lot more value in losing to that super team from Durham than there is in losing this game to a team that doesn't have a head coach.
I agree. I mean, this is still a Final Four team. It's weird. It didn't look like that heading into the season.
This Sweet 16 is stacked.
It is stacked, but
like
that's really weird how you can say
seeds,
that with how short-handed this team is.
It's weird.
Top 3 seeds.
You can still consider this a Final Four
but
team.
the way they're playing, I still feel like they're not getting the sum of their parts all to its fullest potential, and that's the thing. So it's if they can put it together. I mean, they could beat pretty much anybody left in this bracket. So, like Kyle was saying, if you lost to the super team Duke in an Elite Eight, I think that'd be a pretty good finish considering where you were starting.
Well, an interesting matchup is on the horizon. Michigan State, LSU, kicking off Friday. Kyle, what time are we going to have live call of that game?
Well, the game begins at 7:09.
There we go.
You've got to remember the extra 9 minutes for whatever reason. So Joey and I will spitball it. We'll say something the day of the game, and I don't know, 6:55, 6:50,
Maybe 53.
Yeah, 53 because they went 09. We'll go 53.
Right.
6:53 Eastern time.
All right, we like it. 6:53. Get in your cars. Turn your radios on.
Not a minute before.
Not a minute before. Not a minute after. Right there. Joey Ellis, Kyle Turk on the call for you in Washington, D.C. Joe Dandrin with the writing, the tweets, any other content needs you want to fill. They'll be there in Washington, D.C. enjoying it up. Maybe they'll see DJT while they're down there. Maybe he'll check out. It's him and John Engler, I think, will be sitting right down courtside, I'm pretty sure. That's quite a duo down
Public
courtside.
enemy number 1 and 2 right there. Can I say that on this podcast? I don't know if it's... Is
Sure.
that bot legal?
I think it is. I think it's
Why
fine.
not?
I think
Why not?
That's bot acceptable.
Michigan State, LSU, a trip to the Elite Eight is on the line. That game on Friday. Live coverage. WDBM Sports is down there
do it the podcast.
in Washington, D.C. Oh, we're having a call-in.
You'll just call to the top, and then we'll just call you, and we'll figure it out.
We're having an episode.
Okay.
We're going to work it out.
The
There
rap-
will be an episode 22 before whoever they play. Duke, VT.
Whoa. He just assumed. What if they lose?
Should they get there?
What did Joey say all last week? They gotta win. Hey, you gotta win first.
Gotta win.
They got to win.
This time of year, are you kidding? You gotta get there first.
Well, either way, should they get there, there's going to be a podcast.
We'll chat.
But this is it. Season 6, episode 21 in the books. Win, loss, episode 22 will be on the way shortly. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.